For the slow start, I got out of local government, a little bit slow. We were doing budgets over there. First, before we get started, are there any bill introductions? Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of KDOT, I would like to introduce 24 RS 2697. It is a bill to amend the existing state plane coordinate system law related to geographic positions on survey. This is to update the language so we're in compliance with federal and there won't be conflicting surveys.
Committee, any questions or objections to introducing that bill? Seeing none, that's introduced. Any other bill introductions? Senator Erickson, welcome to Fed and State.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members, I'd like to request 24 RS 2346 pertaining to orders of child support.
Any questions or objections to introduction of that bill? Seeing none, that is introduced.
Thank you, Mr.
Any other bill introductions? Seeing none, thank you very much. We're going to move right on. Committee, we're going to do the final action on let's start with the Kansas Racing and Gaming Commission budgets. You've had a chance to look those over, and are there any questions or discussion on the Racing and Gaming Commission budget? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve as recommended or other motion? Senator Longvine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we move forward and recommend the Kansas and Racing Gaming Commission budget.
Thank you, Senator. Any discussion? Is there a second on that? Second by Senator Cluse. So a motion to pass out the Kansas Racing and Gaming Commission budgets as presented, and second by Senator Cluse. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. That has passed, so it'll move over to Ways and Means. Next, we'll talk about the Kansas lottery budget, and any discussion on that budget at all? Senator Peterson.
Well, I had some concerns about removing the IT security people after their answers to the questions. Those concerns have been alleviated. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Any other discussion or questions? Generally, and my comments are, the budget looks good to me. I don't have any big problem with it. I guess the big question is, there was this legislative post-audit study on the EDIF funds, and there's typically about $42 million that goes into the EDIF funds, but I hate to overlook the good work by the folks at the legislative post-audit. And on your, you can see a sheet I passed out. Some of the highlights here, that only about 18% of those EDI funds went to programs consistent with specific legislative intent, about 14 million related to economic development, but we don't administer those funds according to best practices. The state doesn't track EDIF funds. Basically, it's treated like state general funds according to our legislative post-audit, and I guess the question is, and it would be a proviso, not a statutory change, do we sweep those funds back into state general fund for other uses, such as reconciliation, for whatever? It's just a discussion I wanted to have, and I'd certainly open it up to anybody who has comments on that. If we could make a recommendation to pass the budget out with the recommendation that Ways and Means look at that as a proviso, that would be just a thought I had, and I'd certainly entertain any discussion on that. Senator Fausto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So putting that money back into the state general fund, and then it could just be used for anything, or did you have a specific use for it?
Well, you know, again, it's 42 million, so it's not a massive, massive chunk of money. But my concern is that it's not being used properly anyhow. And legislature really, by putting it right to the agencies, doesn't have that much oversight in it. It's money that we could actually then Ways and Means could use for other purposes. Senator Cluse.
So just, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just so I understand this. So right now it's going there, but the agencies aren't using it all up. Am I understanding that right?
It's being apportioned, but a lot of it is not being used, it's being spent, but a lot of it's not being spent on the original intent from the legislation which the statute which requires that money to be spent on economic development. So my thoughts were, if it's not being spent efficiently there, let's put it into state general fund, and then if those agencies want that money back, they come and justify that to our Ways and Means Committee. Senator Reitman. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Senator Clues before.
So it's just following up on that. So the money was already designated for a certain use, but it's not being used for that.
According to the legislative post-audit study, correct.
Okay. Just wanted to be
Senator Reitman and Senator Longbine.
Thank you very much. When we did pass this bill in the first place, the money's supposed to go into these different areas. And not all of it is being spent, and it's supposed to audit it, saying it. I would still like to know a little more reason why it's not, I know like one's in the problem gaming fund, and I do know there is another group that wants to sweep this, and I'm not real excited about that neither, okay? But I'm not real excited about making a recommendation when I don't know enough about it, that why isn't this being spent, or could it be spent? So that's my dilemma on it, that I don't know enough to make an intelligent decision on it. Thank you.
Senator Longbine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess a couple of concerns. Number one is I think this committee can, send long recommendations to the Ways and Means Committee, but I don't believe that this subcommittee can develop a proviso that goes into the budget. So it would only be a recommendation. I think my main concern is the timeliness of the post-audit. It's now almost 6 years old. And so when I look at fiscal year 18, was that the last year of the Collier administration? Was that the first year of the Kelly administration? I don't think we have timely data to consider whether those funds, the percentages may look completely different today than they did almost 6 years ago. So we certainly want legislative intent to be what it is, and we want our agencies and our money spent according to legislative intent. I just don't know that it's appropriate to make a recommendation on data that's this old.
Okay. Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the bullet points on the handout that we received about the post-audit, it says that the statute says that the funding must go into those 3 EDIF accounts, but that it has not been distributed to those 3 accounts in recent years. Could we just put a recommendation with this budget that Ways and Means review those specific 3 accounts and make sure they're following as statute says?
Absolutely. In fact, I think that was the whole point of this discussion. What can we do? What should we do? What recommendations should we make? And just because Ways and Means are going to make those final decisions, I just thought it'd be good discussion to have. So I don't know if committee's comfortable with that, but certainly I'd entertain that motion. And before we do that, let's go on to Senator Falscadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If staff could state those 3 accounts that money was originally appropriated for.
I can look real fast, too. I probably got it right here. Yeah, Lena, can you find it? I probably should have. Let me see. What was that? Jason, did you find it?
I think I've located the statute, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It appears to be the Kansas Capital Formation Account, the Kansas Economic Development Endowment Account. I'm looking for the third one here. Just a minute. The Kansas Economic Development Research and Development Account. Those appear to be the three statutory accounts created within the Economic Development Initiatives Fund.
Thank you, Jason. And again, this is, as Senator Longvine pointed out, this is published in 2019. From what I've understood, we're still sending over about 42 million each year based on the budgets that we're looking at for the lottery currently. But how that portion percentage-wise, hard to say. And maybe it is a recommendation that Ways and Means, do some deep dive into making sure that's being spent the way it's supposed to be. Senator Holscher, did you have a follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I would have extreme hesitation making any type of judgment call on a recommendation on this information just because of, again, was alluded to the timing of this post-audit and just really not enough background information for us to make good decisions in an efficient, timely manner.
Senator Longvine?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, I guess, a matter of process. We were charged with reviewing the budget of the lottery. Where the state general fund money comes, where it goes from a lot of, really has absolutely nothing to do with the agency's budget, because they're ordered to send a certain percentage to SGF, and then it's put here. So are we going to try to put language in the budget recommendation, or are we going to do this separately?
I thought, a recommendation from this subcommittee to the Ways and Means that's something we're concerned about. Doesn't mean that they have to follow up on it, but it would be some kind of a concern that maybe it's something that we could look for, they could consider, or maybe have legislative post-audit.
And I don't disagree with having Ways and Means take a look at it if they so desire. I guess I would prefer to see it in two separate actions, because I don't think this has anything to do with the actual agency budget.
True. It was one of those situations where I saw that money was going somewhere, and I was aware of the legislative post-audit work, and I hate to ignore that. Sure. So that was the intent of this discussion. Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did we, by chance, get an answer from last week when I asked the question to the department or the agency for a balance of the white collar crime fund and the Attracting Professional Sports in Kansas fund? I mean, I know these funds were created at the 11th hour when sports wagering was put into law. So no one really seemed like they knew what the funds were doing or how much money was in there. I was curious if we got answers on exactly what the money's doing.
We can have our agency come on up. Steve, right? Or Matt.
The finance director at the lottery. So the fiscal year 23, from September when we started doing sports wagering in September of 22 through June of 2023 was first year of operation. The amount of the state share of revenue from those from sports wagering for that time period was roughly $5.8 million. So that first transfers into the white collar crime fund, Attracting Professional Sports to Kansas funds, happened in July of 2023. So those are the first transfers into those funds. $750,000 is the amount to the white collar crime fund, and it was just over $4 million is the amount that went to the Attracting Professional Sports to Kansas fund.
So is the white collar crime fund, which I thought was geared towards like degrees or professions of going after white collar crime, is that fund being utilized? I mean, is the money going somewhere, being spent, or is it just sitting there?
Like I said, the transfer just got made in July, so then they would be just starting to use it this current fiscal year is when that's first available to be used.
Appreciate that. And then I got one more question just for the revisor. I'm assuming those funds are in statute based on the sports wagering law. I mean, if those funds were going to be abolished and the money going towards SGF, it'd have to be a statutory change. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, both funds were created in statute and are statutory funds. The Committee on Ways and Means can appropriate $0 for those funds, and so monies cannot be spent from those funds. But if you wanted to truly abolish the funds, yes, you would need a statutory amendment to abolish them.
Senator Longmire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a little background from my memory on sports wagering. The White Collar Crime Fund was originally purposed to have the Regents universities establish a white collar crime program. The Regents at the time that we did it indicated that it would be very difficult for them to do. They didn't know how much student interest they would have. They didn't know which universities could establish a program, and the dollar amount that would be transferred would probably not be sufficient to establish the plan. But as sometimes works in politics, we had to put that in there to get enough votes to satisfy a couple people to gain their support.
Okay. Any other discussion? I think we've had a pretty robust discussion here, so I entertain a motion on the budget. Senator Longmire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we approve and recommend the Kansas Lotteries Agency budget.
Is there a second? Second by Senator Fausto. Any discussion? We've got a motion and a second to approve the budget as presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. It goes to Ways and Means. Thank you, committee. Next up, we are going to work Senate Bill 366. And just as a quick reminder, I'll have Jason cover that bill. And this is the bill basically that would prohibit a county election official from sending out an advance ballot unless it was requested by an individual. And I'll have Jason do a quick review.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 366, as you recall, made a couple of amendments to provisions that were enacted with respect to advanced voting ballot applications back in 2021. One amendment was to modify the requirements for private third parties who are sending solicitations to registered voters that include an advanced voting ballot application. They have to include a label naming the organization or individual who is sending that solicitation, their address, and a disclosure that it is not a government mailing. That label under Senate Bill 366 would only need to be in 12-point font and would only need to appear either on the exterior of the mailing or on at least one page within the mailing. So that is the first amendment to those provisions. The second is with respect to mailing an application for an advanced voting ballot to a registered voter. There's no change with respect to applications mailed by private third parties other than what I just mentioned. However, if a county election officer or employee of the county election office is going to mail an application to a registered voter, they can only do so if it has been requested by that registered voter. And if they do so, no portion of the application can be completed prior to mailing it to the registered voter.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Any questions, committee? Basically, on the 12-point, we had some pushback when we made it to 14-point and requiring it on all pages, because a lot of the third-party people were, it's a huge expenditure because it's larger font, takes up more room, takes up more printing, and which is why we reduced it to 12-point. And then on the election, of course, we had the Johnson County election commissioner who mailed out the 418,000 advance ballots without solicitation. We did hear some pushback the other day about being pre-printed because of the legibility of the handwriting. That could be fixed, I think, pretty easily, but any discussion on that? Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the, what has to be printed on there. I think it says under the disclosure, this is not a government mailing. This is from a private individual. Is there some way, because a lot of times mail like that will say not official, or, is there a way we can put the word official in there easily without making it too?
Jason can, let's look at that and see. It would be in the list of things that needs to have.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Page 5,
Right.
line 6, it says the following statement. It says disclosure, this is not a government mailing. Is there a way we can put disclosure, this is not official mail?
It could be.
Or an official government mailing? I think the word official is what people understand, is what I'm trying to say.
Would you like to propose a conceptual amendment on that? I'd accept that.
Yes,
Since
if I
it's just two
could.
words.
On line 6, I would move to amend it to say, this is not an official government mailing.
Is there a second on that? Second by Senator Peterson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. That carries. So we're back onto the main bill here. Oh, quick question, Senator Faustido.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For staff, maybe, I can't remember during the hearing or this discussion from the Secretary of State's office, did we talk about how we would advise the voters that they can't, that they won't automatically get that advance ballot? Like public service announcements, didn't we?
As I recall, Secretary of State kind of was agnostic on that. They felt like that information was already out there. Now, this would not prevent them from sending out any other information like, polling places, precincts, locations, or all that other information that they do send out. And I know in Johnson County, they send out a lot of good stuff that, tells you what dates the advanced voting is on. This would just prohibit them from sending out that application for an advanced ballot without the request of the individual. Senator Faustido.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We keep changing a lot of the rules for voters. And so while there are those that may know that if they're out of town, they request an advance ballot, college students do. We already have the permanent advance ballot going out for those with disabilities. However, if the mindset is we're going to receive that application from the Elections Commission and now they don't receive it, I was just wondering if there was any type of direction from the Secretary of State's office that might let the counties know, in that literature that you talked about, they sent out maybe somewhere in there saying you must request that application. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did we have any data from the other day, maybe I just don't recall, in regard to what age groups utilize the advance ballots? Was there any type of breakdown provided?
I think there was. Hold on. Well, I don't have it readily available. I do know that the vast majority of people either vote in person or advanced in person. I think the breakdown from Johnson County was only about 30,000 used the advanced voting, as I recall.
Right, Grant, I guess, and this was probably in.
But the age group, I don't know.
Okay, yeah, and what was probably considered an off year in terms of the numbers, but,
Right.
okay, thank you, because I don't think we saw that type of breakdown, which might be important information to have, but I have huge concerns with this bill. First and foremost, it oversteps local control. We have local election officials in place to make decisions. pertinent to that local area, that county, and that community. And, I think somebody did mention this, there is a benefit to pre-printed applications. It makes it easier for the people working at the election office because we get a number of people who submit applications, and it's hard to read, and lots of calls have to be made to follow up. So it's actually more efficient to send the pre-printed. But, my biggest concern is that we would be prohibiting a trusted local source from sending out these applications and only allowing third parties, which now would say not official. I think that's going to be even more confusing to people who have become used to the applications and voting by mail. And, in Johnson County, I know that's been brought up a lot, we have a capacity issue. We can't always get the number of locations, polling locations that we need. This was an efficient use of a mailer that was sent out to say an election is coming up, provided a lot of information. And I do understand that maybe some people didn't like the fact that they were sent out, but this bill feels like a very punitive measure for something that helped drive turnout and was very efficient. So I will be against it. Thank you.
Comment, Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think the bill prevents them and a private or individual organization from mailing them out. It just prohibits the county election officer or the employee of a county election office from mailing them out unsolicited. So I fully support the bill. Thanks.
The big concern that I heard from a lot of people is that sending it out unsolicited with it all filled out, somebody could say, if they didn't have a gang box, if they had individual mailboxes, somebody could take that from that mailbox, send it in, attempt to, voter fraud or ID theft type situations. The other concern was the funding issue. It was $131,000. And we do, as the legislature, set election policy. And then the Secretary of State has to follow that policy, and so do the county election officials. So when you see something like this, where a situation where we're not limiting that access, we could change, if you're concerned about the pre-printing, we could strike that line on page 5, line 31, where it says no portion of such application shall be completed prior to mailing, and just restrict the county election official from sending it out unless it's requested. But if they wanted to pre-print that, they could go ahead and do that for legibility purposes, and I would accept a conceptual amendment on that.
I appreciate that. That really still doesn't take care of the heart of the issue, that we're moving or not allowing a trusted source. If there's a crisis or something horrible happens and we don't have enough polling locations and the local official says, okay, we need to do this mailing because we will have capacity issues, we've taken that away and only allowed third parties, and I understand that. This would still allow third parties, but those probably aren't a trusted source and maybe don't seem so official to people. So I think that makes it a little bit more confusing. But again, I think one of the conferees alluded to, what if there's, a fire and some of those locations burn down? We have totally taken away the ability of the local officials to respond to that, and likely would have a capacity issue, as, like I said, we already have a capacity issue. So, so that, like I said, is part of the concern there.
Committee, any other questions?
I do appreciate that.
Senator Blasey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you're ready for a motion.
I am ready.
I'll move that we pass out Senate Bill 366 favorably for passage as amended.
I have a second. Second by Senator Cluse. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. Motion carries. Senate Bill 366 is passed. Thank you very much for the discussion. It was a robust discussion. We're going to move on now to Senate Bill 254. And that is working that bill. And I'll have Jason give us the overview on that. That has to do with the appointment during a vacancy. Jason?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 254 was the bill to address vacancies in the office of United States Senator. And this bill was similar to in structure to Senate Bill 249 that the committee considered last week, and that vacancies would be filled under the bill by election of a person at the state party delegate convention that is to be held within 21 days after the vacancy has occurred. The delegates at the convention, who are all state party members, would elect the candidate to fill that position by secret ballot. They would then transmit their election to the governor with a copy to the Secretary of State's office, and the governor would then be directed to appoint that person to fill the office of United States Senator within 1 week, or else the statute would automatically designate that person as filling the vacancy in the office of United States Senator.
Thank you, Jason. And committee, as you recall, there was a conflict with the 17th Amendment with the way this bill was originally drafted, so we've got to change that and amend that to make it conform. Are there any, I have an amendment, but I was just seeing if there were any other amendments. Let's look at, I think, the Wyoming, which is RS 2670, Jason, and pass that out to the committee. Thank you, sir. Let the committee get a look at it. And once everybody has a chance, I'll have Jason explain this amendment.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the proposed substitute for Senate Bill 254 would modify KSA 25-318 with respect to vacancies in the office of United States Senator, would require the governor to notify the chairperson of the state party committee of the same political party as the United States Senator elected at the immediately preceding election. So we're still talking about the same political party as we were under the underlying bill 254. Then the state party committee would conduct an election within 15 days after receipt of notice of the vacancy. And at that meeting, they would select 3 individuals that the state party committee felt qualified to fill that vacancy and transmit those names to the governor. Within 5 days after receiving those names, the governor would make a temporary appointment of one of those 3 individuals who are transmitted to the governor to fill the vacancy until the next election of representatives in Congress. And at that time, then the vacancy would be filled by that election. If the U.S. Senator who was elected was an independent and not registered with any political party at the time of their election, then each state party committee of each political party that's recognized in the state would conduct a meeting and transmit one name of a qualified individual to the governor, and the governor would also take petitions of individuals who wanted to fill that vacancy, and then the governor would choose a temporary appointee from the list of names from the state party committees or anybody who had submitted a petition that had been signed by at least 100 registered voters seeking consideration for that appointment.
Committee, any questions? Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Jason, there's no special election or anything that happens? The party just submits some names, the governor selects? Am I still understanding this correctly? This is the Wyoming model?
This is the Wyoming model, yes.
That's correct, but it is, as under current law, it is a temporary appointment just to fill that portion of the term until the next election of U.S. House members, which would be within 2 years. And at that next general election, then the U.S. Senator is elected to fill the remainder of that term.
So how does this meet constitutional muster if the underlining bill kind of did the same thing where the party selects? Help me understand, I guess, how this is constitutional.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I believe this is more arguable to be within the bounds of the 17th Amendment because the governor is still making the appointment based on the governor's selection of the name because it is a slate of 3 to choose from rather than being directed as to a specific individual to appoint. I believe that is the argument. I also do not know of any legal challenge to this methodology for filling a U.S. Senator seat that has been brought yet.
Senator Straub?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the language from Wyoming, correct? Have they had to utilize it yet?
I don't know that. I'd have to look and see if Wyoming's actually exercised this method for filling a vacancy.
Senator Faustido?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason, so the selection would be made by the political party that originally, of the office that the individual held. So that political party, would that be precinct committee people in that political party?
No, it's state party
Yeah,
committee.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, it's a state party committee, not precinct. And it's at the state level, and they are selecting 3 individuals to then put up a slate of those 3 individuals to the governor to choose one from for filling the appointment.
Mr. Chairman, did we consider the motion made by Senator Blasey that it would be subject to Senate confirmation?
That was on another bill.
Okay.
That was on a separate, that
Thank
was
you,
on
thank you.
249.
Thank you.
Yes. Senator Longbine?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason, I hate to put you on the spot, but you made the comment that this might be more arguably constitutional than the previous. If the previous was at 0%, does that mean this is like 5%, or does this mean like it's 50% or 75%? Can you give me a little, I know it's impossible to gauge what the courts do, and I know that we've got no challenge in front of us, but I get real uncomfortable when we start talking about the constitutionality of something we're trying to pass.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, attorneys are reticent to apply percentages with respect to legal challenges. I will say that because this is based on state provisions from the state of Wyoming, and that I do not know of any legal challenge at this time as to the constitutionality of those statutory provisions, it's my opinion that this is significantly more comfortable with respect to surviving a constitutional challenge than the underlying provisions of Senate Bill 254.
Committee, any other questions? Senator Holscher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we only have one state that has adopted this, so I have concerns too about the more arguable in terms of meeting constitutional muster and what that could mean for us. And it's because it still opens the door to potential problems and overall just makes the process less efficient. So I appreciate the motion, but I will not support. Thank you.
Yeah. There's actually 7 states that make the governor choose from a list of nominees submitted by the previous senator's party. It's Hawaii, Kentucky, Maryland, Montana, North Carolina, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Senator Reichman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I'm trying to wrap my head around this too, this Wyoming thing. The part when I'm still a little confused how this would work in practice. When it gets to the part where it says each chairperson shall call a meeting would such each state party committee and not more than 15 days. So who would make up that state party committee? Would that just be the executive thing, or that be all the delegates, or would the state chairman pick who's in that committee? I'm just confused, and I don't know if you can answer that. I'm not sure. Thank you.
Jason?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, first of all, I want to point out that if multiple state party committees are involved, that's only in the instances where the U.S. Senator was an independent when they were elected at the previous election. So if the U.S. Senator was a member of a registered political party, say a Republican or a Democrat, then only the Republican State Party Committee or only the Democrat State Party Committee would need to meet to fill the vacancy. And in that case, it's a meeting of the State Party Committee, which I believe would consist of the members of the State Party Committee who are on that State Party Committee, who are members of that, were the ones who be called to meet by the chairperson and select 3 individuals.
Follow up. Okay,
Sure.
thank you. I guess my question is, I'm kind of ignorant of knowing who makes up the state party committee, unlike the Republicans or the Democrats or whatever. I guess that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Okay, so Jason, do you have an answer on that?
I, not being a member of either state party, I'm ignorant of that as well. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Straub?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to further elaborate on that, in the language of this, the way I understand it, they have to notify the chairperson of the state party, and then the state party has to hold a meeting within 15 days, but it doesn't say who that meeting has to be held with. So if the state party has party rules that allow for the chairperson to call an executive committee or an elections committee or just the congressional executive committees, I suppose the language allows for each party to have their own committees within the state party that may select these individuals. Like, it may not be all of your congressional delegates. It may not be all of your precinct people. It may just be a select few determined by party rules.
Jason?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the language says the chairperson shall call a meeting of the state party committee, and that at that meeting, the state party committee shall select 3 individuals. So it specifically refers to the state party committee, whatever that body is under the state party's rules. I don't know how those rules are formed, but there would have to be some argument to be made that it would be something less than the entire state party committee that could be called and make this determination.
Senator Blasey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's the concern brought up by Senator Straub, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think hypothetically the party could cut out a congressional district. Let's say, for example, they want to cut out my congressional district of the 4th by party rules. So I think right now each district has 40 members in the Republican Party, 40 delegates, but by the rules they could change that easily and cut out a congressional party or district, which could be concerning.
I'm hearing a lot of hesitation on this particular amendment. We do have another amendment. Since we haven't made a motion on this particular amendment, let's bring up the second amendment. This is the Oregon model, and discuss that and see if there's any appetite for that version. I'll let Jason cover us on that particular amendment. And whenever you're ready, Jason.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, under this proposed substitute for Senate Bill 254, there would be no temporary appointment to fill the vacancy in the office of United States Senator. Instead, the governor is directed to set a date of a special election. Not later than 5 days after the vacancy would occur, the governor would make a proclamation setting the date of a special election. The date of that election would have to be held not more than 61 days after the proclamation is issued. The proclamation would be writing and delivered to the Secretary of State and published in the Kansas Register. There are provisions in the vacancy occurs, excuse me, not more than 61 days and not less than 30 days before any primary election. Then the election provided for could be held on the same date as the primary election. And same, it could be coincide with a general election if the vacancy falls within certain timelines, and the governor can proclaim the day of the election to be the same as the general election. So the provision there, this is based and somewhat off of the Oregon provisions with respect to holding a special election within 61 days. I will also note for the committee that most of the procedural language in here is based off of current Kansas state law with respect to U.S. House congressional vacancies, which require a special election to be held by federal law. And so most of the language you see on pages 2 and 3 is actually borrowed from current Kansas state law with respect to U.S. House special elections to fill a vacancy there. The primary point taken from Oregon is the holding the special election within 61 days after the proclamation is made, which has to be within 5 days after the vacancy occurs.
Questions, committee? It's a lot to digest. Senator Strom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on the surface, I'm entertaining the language of this a lot more than the other, simply because the fact that I know special elections are costly, but in the event that a senator were to vacate office, that money being spent would be warranted for a position of that caliber. So I'm liking this a lot better.
It's a lot to ask the committee to digest this in a few minutes and make a vote. So what I would like to do is suspend working this bill until the committee has a chance to think about this. And then we can resume here and we'll put it on the calendar. But that'll give you, committee, a chance to digest what you're thinking on this particular amendment, and we can have a good discussion on it. Senator Cluse, did you have a comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So I'm wondering if, and even looking back to the other amendment, if we could find out more details how each state party would
conduct that.
Yeah, how they would conduct that, and so there wouldn't be question.
I wonder, Elena, could you look into that, do some research on how each party would do that, and how, if there's any particular rules that we can consider before we decide which amendment we want to go with to deal with this? Yeah, it's a good idea. Senator Fascadeau, do you have an
I didn't.
comment?
I was just
Okay.
agreeing.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. I'll give you everyone a chance to look this over. We've got to work. We're actually hearing bills the rest of the week, so I don't think we'll get to work this. And I know Senator Longbein is going to be gone, so we'll wait till he gets back to work the bill. Oh, did you have a question, Senator Holscher?
Well, first, thank you for suspending work on that bill so we can digest it a little bit more and make sure we're totally understanding. And I did have a question. Are you planning to work SB 36, which is the Crown Act?
I'm not sure yet on that one.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I just wanted to follow up because it's been a couple weeks.
Understand.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, committee, I think it's HB 2446 we're going to hear tomorrow. We're done for today. Thank you for your work and discussion. I appreciate it. We are adjourned.